Hello, my name is Dr. Logan Noone. I just graduated medical school and I'm so honored to be with you virtually today. I wish I could be there in person, but you guys caught me at one of the most hectic times of my life. I just moved cross country from Washington State, where I did medical school, and I'm about to start my psychiatric training out in Philadelphia. The timing didn't work out perfectly. I actually was just in North Dakota last week. Both of my dogs were sprayed by a skunk there. So, kind of a little interesting story from North Dakota, but I'm so excited to share my story with you. So, why I decided to really be a psychiatrist and study medicine is kind of a real interesting journey. See, about 10 years ago, it was May of 2011, is when I had my first manic episode. And it was kind of very a classic out of the book manic episode. I had gone through a period of deep depression for 2 years prior to that. I had extremely difficulty sleeping. And, I really isolated myself, which is very different than my normal character. I just really kept to myself in my room. And normally I'm very friendly and enjoy being around people all the time. Now, during this manic episode about 10 years ago, I suddenly just kind of had a switch go off in my brain. And who really knows exactly why? Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was just the life change of graduation. But suddenly, I thought I had come up with this revolutionary idea that would change the world overnight. And I was so convinced this idea would work, I was actually harassing my parents' friends, trying to get them to invest in this company that I had made up overnight on the spot. And I was literally up for about 5 days in a row without any sleep. I was behaving kind of erratically. People were having a hard time following my speech patterns. And it even got to the point where I was so severely paranoid. I thought the government and FBI were tracking me. I was taking the battery out of my cell phone. It was just really classic mania, classic psychosis. And in that 5 day period, it was obviously very scary for my family. But my mother sadly recognized the behavior. Bipolar disorder had run in her family. Her brother had this disease. And so she was uncomfortably familiar with the conditions that she was seeing in front of me. And it was really a wonderful effort of my family, my friends, but also the government kind of surrounding me at that time. And I'll explain. So, they called a mental health hotline. We were living in Connecticut at the time. And we had a mental health first responders team that actually even came to my house to help convince me to seek out professional psychiatric treatment. So, with the help of my family, friends, and these counselors, they convinced me, like, hey, this behavior that you're exhibiting over these past 5 days, this is not normal, Logan. Can you recognize this? And I was very fortunate that I was able to have that kind of resources in my life, and it brought me to an inpatient psychiatric ward right up here in Torrington, Connecticut, about 5 minutes from my house. And we've obviously seen and heard many different stories where it's gone extremely differently than that. Maybe the police had to get involved, or more EMTs, and it's very challenging, I think, for people in those instances where they're dealing with psychosis to really accept that they do need treatment. So I'm so excited to hopefully you guys have that system in North Dakota, or you can maybe implement more resources into something like that, because those kind of mental health crisis workers were so imperative to my care at that stage. So I was in the psych ward for the next 5 days, locked inpatient facility. And it was there that I was finally diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And over the next 5 days, I was able to get somewhat stabilized on medication, but that took about 6 months before I really found medication that worked with me. But in the psych ward, they kind of really tried to explain what stigma is, and how I need to potentially be mindful about how I disclose my disorder. They describe to me how, if you tell your job about how you have bipolar disorder, it's possible that they may choose to not hire you or keep you on board. Sometimes people have even been discriminated against with housing. And, at that time in my life, I was single. They said, obviously, potentially with dating, this could be really challenging. It's best to not tell anybody except your maybe immediate circle about your mental illness. So I left the psych ward, And I was even in a deeper state of isolation than I was prior to entering the psych ward. I had no one to talk to about my mental illness. I felt all alone and I had no one to relate to. I knew no one who went through anything like this. And it was an absolutely terrible way to live. And at that stage of my life, I still had no idea that I wanted to study medicine. I was actually working in an insurance job at the time. And so that insurance job transferred me out from, I was working in Worcester, Massachusetts, all the way out to Sacramento, California. And kind of on that long cross country drive with my father, and I think we potentially drove through North Dakota at that time, I kind of had an epiphany. I didn't have any friends out in Sacramento. So I just kind of decided, I want to try to live this new life where I'm not ashamed of my mental illness. I know statistically about 4% of our population has bipolar disorder. There has to be other people out there like this. And so for the first few months in Sacramento, I started telling my new roommates, I started explaining to new people what I had been through 6 months ago. And I thought, these new people would be very weirded out by this experience, but I was actually shocked. It was really the contrary. The typical responses that I would get is, oh, I have someone in my family with schizophrenia. That sounds a lot like what they went through. Or I have someone in my family who has addiction issues. They dealt and had to go to a psychiatric ward as well. It was really a great way to find some common ground with people. And these new roommates and friends that I met, they encouraged me to try to take it a step further and start to seek out support groups. So I was able to find support groups where I was able to meet other people with bipolar depression and regular depression, schizophrenia, and start to network with other people with mental illness. And that I got more out of those support groups than meeting with my psychiatrist or my therapist because I finally didn't feel alone. I finally felt like I was kind of normal in this world living with mental illness. So whatever resources you can build in your town, in your school, whatever it may be, I know it's of course hard in this world of COVID that we're living in, to build support groups, I think is such a wonderful tool to offer to those people dealing with mental illness. Just some means of building a community in the world of mental health. So I was a member of these bipolar and depression support groups for quite some time, but I still wasn't really a strong advocate about my mental illness. So I grew up in Litchfield, Connecticut, and it wasn't really until the Sandy Hook shooting down here in Southern Connecticut that I really felt motivated to start speaking out publicly. And just to kind of jog your memory, Sandy Hook was that horrific shooting that happened at an elementary school. And the individual did have mental illness, diagnosed mental illness and a long history of it. And after that happened, I remember the tremendous stigma that I saw on the television, and all the politicians were arguing about gun control, and just some politicians, I remember a vivid line. People with mental illness are like violent ticking time bombs. And I remember being so annoyed and insulted by that comment that I knew that doesn't describe me. I am not a violent person. I've never been arrested, and that is not something I could ever do. And I knew I needed to start sharing my story publicly. So that's when I started joining a public speakers bureau in the Northern California region, where I started to go around to colleges, first responders. I went to hospitals, other fundraisers, and shared my story very similarly to what I'm doing with you right now. What I realized is I, of course, love public speaking. It's going to be something I can continue for the rest of my career. But what I liked more was interacting with the audience after I gave my speech, being able to talk with people about their experiences with mental health. And I just felt this tremendous urge to try to help people with their mental illness. So I kind of knew I wanted to be a provider in the mental illness space. I didn't know if I wanted to be a therapist or a psychiatrist. I chose the world of psychiatry because I hope that I can kind of contribute to the world of psychiatry and make it more objective. See, as a psychiatrist right now, my patients will come in. I will interpret what they're saying, how they're acting, even their eye contact with me, and try to make a diagnosis based off of that. And I think that's incredibly challenging. If you compare that to the world of an oncologist or maybe a cardiologist, they can have objective measures, whether that's scans looking for cancerous cells or an EKG or an echocardiogram analyzing the heart, really objective means to analyze disease. I hope the world of psychiatry can get there too, whether that be brain scans, genetic testing. Who really knows at this point? But that's really why I felt so motivated to also enter the world of psychiatry. Additionally, medications sometimes have more negative benefits than actually positive benefits for the patients. For instance, I take a medication right now called valproate. It's also known as Depakote. It's doing wonders to control my moods, but it is a tremendous weight gainer. And this is something that we hear over and over again, especially in the world of psychiatric medication. So I hope in the world of psychiatry, I can hope work on objective diagnosis and also less harmful treatments. So that's kind of how I got so attracted to the world of psychiatry. So I'm in medical school, and my mother is an elementary art teacher. She taught for over 35 or 30 years about in the public school district out here in Connecticut where I grew up. And she noticed some changes in her children over the decades. She always felt that some kids had emotional issues, dealing with tremendous stress of maybe standardized testing or kids whose parents were maybe going through divorce, whatever it may be. She just felt over time more and more she was noticing more children with emotional issues. So she came to me and she was like, Logan, I really want to try to help out these kids. What can we kind of do to really help out these children? So, what we did is we saw the movie Inside Out. And that was absolutely one of my favorite movies in the world. And how that was depicted for kids, helping to explain emotions, I think is wonderful. If you haven't seen that movie, I strongly, strongly encourage you to check it out. But what we wanted to do is really create a novel that would make kids more comfortable discussing their mental illness. And that's how we decided to write We All Have Something. So this is a story that is going to be in every single school in the North Dakota region, public and private. I am so honored that you have chosen to put this in your schools. And really what it does is it follows my journey. Obviously we changed it a little bit. We based it more off of an elementary boy because we hope that this story is most appropriate for ages about 5 to 12. But it's based off of real friendships that I had in my own life. And what we try to do in this story is essentially try to equate the mental health experience with other disease. So you'll find when you read this story, there's one boy that I encounter that he deals with a heart condition and he uses meditation, to help control his heart. And I talk about how, me in the story tries to use meditation to start to control some of my anxiety. Another character in the book has cancer, and that's also based off one of the real friendships I had in my life. And normalizing the experience of going to see a doctor and how that's not weird. It's just like having cancer. What's so different but having a mental illness and going and seeing a doctor? It's really all the same. It's just another organ in the body. And then the last character in the book has diabetes. And so we try to equate taking diabetic insulin medication with taking psychiatric medication. Why should it be any different? It's just another organ in the body. It's really all the same. So it's really a beautiful, wonderful story. It's really the thing I'm most proud of, trying to make kids more comfortable dealing with their mental illness, their mental health challenges, whatever it may be. And maybe if they have to take medication, normalize that experience too. So I was able to write this story with my mother. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. You'll get to meet her too today in this breakout session, and she'll explain and we'll talk about how we came up with this story and worked on it together and how she did the illustrations. I also want to remind you that during the week of this summit from June 8th through the 13th, anyone that logs on to We All Have Something, the Amazon page, has a free Kindle download. There's a free download period just in honor of this North Dakota summit. Anyone with the link can go and download the Kindle version. It's really free and easy. There's no special code or anything you need to do. So all you need to do is log on to Amazon. You can either punch in "We All Have Something" or my name, Logan Noone. That's Noone. When you have the link, you can click on the Kindle version and download the free Kindle version for yourself. And also, you'll find you can purchase a hard copy there if you'd like as well. But remember, every one of the school districts will have a copy of this as well. All right, and now I'm going to bring on my mother, Rochelle Clemenson. So why don't you sit down and join us, Mom?
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Mrs. Clemenson, or Rochelle Clemenson. Logan, you're Logan Noone, and I'm Rochelle Clemenson. I kept my last name. You don't always have to change it because I was an artist and in the business world before. So I just wanted to explain that because some kids have asked, why are your names different? All right. So I'm the illustrator. That means that I took Logan's words and I had to draw pictures to match them.
Well, you were more than just illustrator. You know, I think when our first draft of creating this book, I remember I was using words that were not the most appropriate for kids. I was using words like anxiety, depression, and we go and define these in the book. But Mother was really great in making the words appropriate, the sentence structures appropriate for the elementary kids. So she was an illustrator, but also a great editor as well.
I've also been an art teacher and worked with little kids from 3 to 8 for the last 22 years. So I said to Logan, you know, we need to, I know 2 things about kids. They love, not too many words, they love color, and they love finding things. And Logan said, what? What are you talking about, Mom? So when we started with the book, he took the words, we cut down the words a little bit. I took, Logan, I'd say it was on the whole wall over there. I laid out what our picture board like, so we knew what was going to be on each side. Kind of, okay, these 2 pages are going to tell this story, and then the other 2. So I laid that all out. I would love to show you, but you know what? We don't have it right now because we did it 2 years ago. I got out all my papers. I used scrap papers. I used I used wallpapers, things like that. And I cut and paste. I did collage. That's when you take paper and you paste it down. I'm sure you guys have done all that. And we laid out, the first thing we did was the cover. All right. So we laid out the cover. I don't know if you can see it right there. I did the cover first. I knew kids loved color. I knew that they liked finding things. So what I told
Why
Logan,
don't you explain that key thing?
Yes, that's what I'm going to do right now. I made a key. The kids used to love to come to my room and find things in a book. You know, those I Spy books? So what I did is each kid stood for a different color. So if you see G, that's Garrett in the book. He's always in orange. Logan is always in blue. And so on, so on. But you see that little heart? I really love Logan. And I wanted to do it for him. It took me 2 summers to do it, about 6 months to illustrate.
Yeah, Mom took a very old school approach to creating this novel. There was no computer graphics, nothing like that. She was literally cutting construction paper by hand and pasting it down with tape and glue. So very old school approach. This book could have been made in 1960. We always joke.
Collage. I love Henry Matisse. So then I took and I made a paper dowel.
Get in the shot. There you go.
Made a paper dowel and I used that. You can see Logan there. He's always in blue. And the heart. So kids had to find the heart. Now, if you look, these were the 2 pages that were together. It says he moves to a new place. And if you look at the tree right there, the heart's in. So you have to find the heart, the mother's love, in every one of the pages. Because I remember kids loving I Spy books. All right. And I remember kids loving colors. So you can see all the kids. There's Logan in his blue, Danielle in her pink, Garrett and Noland in his green. All right. And that's how I did every page, one by one. This is the last page, graduation day. That's my favorite page. Everyone, some pages, Logan, have over 50 pieces of little paper. His friends couldn't believe I did it this way, but I love collage and I'm an art teacher. So that's why we did it that way. Well, then we had it printed out like this, little. It's just a little paperback. I said, Logan, this is not working. This is not showing enough color. It takes a process. And then we ended up, I said, Logan, it's got to be hardcover. And we changed hardcover and we made the book like it is today, 12 by or 11 and a half by 12 or something like that. So it's a big book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you read this about what it was about.
Yeah, I went into the story of what it's about. And then remember, the hard copy is available if you want to, of course, purchase on Amazon, but it's in every single school in North Dakota now.
Awesome.
And then also remember, there's a free Kindle download period from June 8th through June 13th. So if you want to get a Kindle version, you could use it on your iPad, on your phone, really any Android device, or even a PC. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere right now, you can still even get a Kindle version of this book.
And a shout out to North Dakota and my niece, Cindy, for helping us promote this book in North Dakota. We really appreciate it. Way to go, North Dakota.
We wish we could be there and join you guys in person. We hope to see you soon, but we were both so honored that we all have something. We'll be in the North Dakota School District. This is a tremendous, like I said, honor for us, and we couldn't be more proud of the state of North Dakota. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.